To the sunny Kent countryside for round 6 of the 2025 GT Cup Championship. We're on the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, steeped in history, a challenging circuit with lots and lots of gradient. Now, the cloud cover has been fairly consistent all day. It's probably not quite as bright as it was yesterday. The track temperature will be slightly lower, but the cars for this 6th race of the season making their way out onto the grid now. There was a separate qualifying session this morning, and that will dictate the grid for the cars that are just going to line up now. In the case of pro drivers, there on the right hand side is Ollie Webb. Pro drivers cannot start this race, so Ollie will have to wait patiently for his opportunity to jump on board the car that he shares with Andre Borodin. That car will start from the 3rd row of the grid. And it's also worth noting, of course, this is the pit stop race, change of format for this year. Previous years it's always been sprint race followed by pit stop race on both days. The change of format for this year means that it's sprint race followed by pit stop race on the Saturday, but on the Sunday it's pit stop race followed by the sprint race, so the opposite way round. And also, as it is the pit stop race, all of the cars will be in the pit lane for varying periods of time. The way that it works is that if you have a pro driver like Ollie Webb, as we've just seen there, with a sporting driver like Andre Borodin, they will stop for 85 seconds in the pit lane. It takes 20 seconds to drive down the pit lane at pit lane speed limit. So in reality, that's 105 seconds from pit in to pit out as a minimum that car would spend. But subject to how they've got on in the previous pit stop race, you can pick up some extra seconds in reality, and that is depends on exactly where you finish as to what you pick up. If you win your group, it's an extra 20. If you finish 2nd, it's an extra 15. If you finish 3rd, it's an extra 10. So we know that the car of Andre Borodin and Ollie Webb will remain stationed in pit lane for 105 seconds in reality from pit in to pit out. If it's any shorter than that, they've done one of a few things. They've either sped down the pit lane, they've not stopped for the requisite amount of time, or there is a possibility they could have done both. If it's a pro sporting driver that shares with a sporting driver, they stop for 5 seconds less in the pits, plus any success seconds that they might have accumulated in yesterday's pit stop race. And if it's 2 sporting drivers or a single sporting driver on their own, they only have 60 seconds stationary in the pit lane, plus, as ever with all of them, that 20 seconds we know it takes to drive down the pit lane at 50 kilometres per hour from one end to the other. So there is our pole sitter, Mark Smith, the American driver, who is on double duties this season. He, in previous years, has commuted from America over to race in the UK. He's largely basing himself more in the UK this year, and was originally, I think, scheduled to only do a few rounds of GT Cup and see how it went, but he's thoroughly enjoyed it. He's had fantastic pace. He is getting to know the McLaren 720S GT3 a lot better. He's getting to know the team that he races for, which is Paddock Motorsport, a lot better. And, of course, he's now got circuit knowledge. So he'll be hoping for an overall win. 23 car there is the car that Ian Campbell will start and hand over to Fraser Fenwick. That was leading its group yesterday before an incident brought about a red flag, and you can see the rear bodywork on it is no longer purple, it's black. Hats off to the Top Cats racing team. It was a contact with their teammates, so 2 cars, 2 Lamborghinis damaged for Top Cats Racing. 3:30 this morning, they finally got both cars repaired. And I think one of those cars, the sister car to it, Peter Aronson, I gather, sort of had a conversation with Fraser Fenwick and his father afterwards and said, look, my mistake. I moved offline, and as he jumped back online again, he caught the tail end of the car that was coming past him, and he held his hands up and was given a grid penalty, a 5-place grid penalty, as a result of being deemed to be the guilty party in that incident. So there was no malice, it was just an unfortunate set of circumstances that took out the 2 cars. So the cars are going to head off on their formation lap. We can give you the grid, we can give you the starting drivers, and I'll give you how much time as a bare minimum they should be in the pit lane from pit in to pit out. That is all timed, and if they're any shorter than the times I give you, a pit lane penalty will be handed in their general direction, which is usually for the amount of time you're short, as a stop-go penalty. So they'll have to come into the pits again for a second time, stop for the period they're short, and then go back out. So it costs you a lot more time than you're short in reality. So then let's give you the grid as they head off on their formation lap around the daunting Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. 50 minutes. We've got varying pit windows depending on which group you're in. Mark Smith starts from pole position, 90 seconds in the pit lane, and alongside is Peter Ursig, who's also got 90 seconds. Row 2 of the grid, Darren Kell will only stop for 80, and alongside is David Shaw. He will stop for 100 before Greg Caton jumps on board for part 2. Row 3 of the grid, Ian Campbell, 80 seconds in the pit lane, and alongside Andre Borodin is on 105 seconds. Row 4 of the grid, Graham Tilley on 125 seconds, and for company it is going to be James Cayley, I believe, that will start that one. 100 seconds in the pit lane. The next row of the grid sees Frank Morris start, 95 seconds in the pit lane alongside Michael McInerney, 115 seconds in the pit lane. Archie Clark is next up, 120 seconds in the pit lane alongside Doc Bush, who is on 80. And then the next row of the grid will see Matt Eddles on 80 seconds when he hands over to Sam Mayer-Lachlan for part 2 of the grid. And I believe going on his own is Simon Griffiths, who will spend 100 seconds in the pit lane. The next row of the grid, Mark Ellman starts, 110 seconds, and alongside is the leading car in Group GTA, number 24 will stop for 95 seconds in the hands of Ian Astley. And then the penultimate row of the grid will be Mac Priestwood, who will start before Lewis Tyndall jumps on board. There'll be 100 seconds there. That car will be stationary. Then it's Brent Millage, who's on 90 seconds, and Peter Aronson, put to the back of the grid with a 5-place grid drop because of the problems of yesterday, will stop for 80 seconds at the wheel of the second of the 2 Top Cats Lamborghinis. So that's the way the grid lines up. As it's the second pit stop race of the day, the cars in Group GTB, Group GTH and Group GTA will stop between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race, and those in Group GTO, Group GT3, Group GTC will stop between the 29th and the 35th minute of the race. So the Hyundai safety car peels its way into the pit lane. The black and the pink McLaren sits there on pole position in the hands of Mark Smith, with Peter Ersig's Audi R8 sitting alongside the Antipodean. Red lights are on the gantry. We've got 50 minutes on the clock, and for the 6th time this year we go racing in the GT Cup Championship as the cars charge their way up towards Paddock Hill for the first time. Mark Smith has the inside line. Peter Ersig on the wide line tucks himself through into second place. Darren Kell is there in third, and David Shaw had a really good run yesterday and handed over the car in good condition, is there in fourth place. Lock brakes from Andre Borodin, a bit of cadence braking to stop the wheels locking, got the McLaren turned in towards Druids, but it's lost a couple of places as a result of that. Sneaking their way through have gone the early leaders in Group GTC, which is going to be Ian Campbell. So you can see the cars all starting to feather their way off the Indy circuit and start to build the speeds as they head onto the Grand Prix section of the circuit. And in second place, Peter Ersig is feeling the pressure a little bit already from Darren Kell, who in the first weekend of racing had his son James Kell alongside him. But James is on driving duties, I think, out in Zandvoort this weekend for the GT World Challenge Europe Sprint Cup. So down towards the braking area for, at the end of the Derek Minter straight, down towards Westfield Corner, they'll work their way for the first time. And it is still going to be Mark Smith who is looking to try and just stretch the lead a little bit. He's driving solo in this one, as he is scheduled to be doing all season, which means he knows the pros are going to be getting on board for part 2 of the race, and what he needs to do is open up the gap early on, try and build an advantage over everybody else, because he knows when the rest of the amateur drivers get out and he remains on board as an AM, then the pros will start to catch him in part 2 of the race. So build the margin in part 1, try and make sure you can maintain some kind of margin in part 2. That's going to be his race tactic for this one. Through Paddock Hill Bend goes number 23 Lamborghini. That's Ian Campbell, early leader of Group GTC, which is a very competitive group this year. Largely Lamborghinis and Porsches. We're hoping to see some Ferraris join the group later on this year. And if you're wondering what Group GTC is for, it's for current or later model manufactured challenge and cup spec cars. So they have to be within the last 5 years in reality. So it's things like Lamborghini Super Trofeos, it's Porsche Carrera Cups, it's Ferrari challenge spec cars, all balanced in terms of performance. Such are the technical regulations. So good fight going on for second and third. Peter Ersig, who's done a lot of winning in this Audi R8 in another series in the last few years, new to GT Cup for this year, thoroughly enjoying himself, really feeling the pressure from the McLaren of James Kell as they fight in the early stages over who's in second and third place. David Shaw's Porsche sits there in fourth, fifth is Ian Campbell, sixth is Andre Borodin after his small little mistake up at Druids on some cold tyres for the first time. But the battle for second and third is raging as they head up towards the completion of lap number 2 this time through. There was nearly 3.4 seconds advantage for Mark Smith, the race leader, at the end of the first lap of the race. At the end of the second lap of the race, that advantage is going to have surely extended further as they come through. It's up to exactly 4 3/4 seconds between himself and Peter Ersig, whose attentions are rather drawn towards defence from Darren Kell at the moment. Early leader in Group GTH comes over the start-finish line, the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin. There's the second of the 2 Aston Martins we've got, which is Matt Eddles, and he is fighting away with the car that I believe was started by Mark Ellman, the SVG Motorsport Ginetta. So turbocharged Aston Martin, normally aspirated and slightly heavier, I would say, Ginetta. and they are pretty much matched for pace. They've got the early leader in Group GTA behind them, I think, which is going to be Ian Astley, I'm led to believe, is the starting driver for that one, at the wheel of the BMW, another car that's run by SVG Motorsport. So along the Cooper Straight, this is going to be the fight for 13th, 14th and 15th places, actually. About to be joined by 16th as well, which is Doc Bush at the wheel of his Group GTC Porsche. And as they then start to stretch their legs through Pilgrim's Drop and Hawthorne Hill, down towards the banked section, almost as they head in towards Hawthorne. The slight banking to that one really allows the car to hug the apex. Matt Eddles has got his hands rather full as Mark Ellman looks one way, looks the other, tries to get an overlap, but can't quite do so as they head towards Westfield Corner, so the order still remains the same. Now, he might have an overlap here as they head up towards Dingledale. Two wheels on the grass as he heads through Dingledale, but I think just hanging on to it is Matt Eddles at the wheel of the newer shape Aston Martin. We saw Matt out with Sam Mayer-Lachlan in one of the older homologated GT4 cars, the older shape Aston Martin V8 Vantage at Donington Park, but they've got the new car available to them for this weekend, and they're making good progress with it as well. Change further back as well, that's Mac Priestwood at the wheel of the white, black and pink Ginetta, has now gone through and ahead of Doc Bush, so he's starting to make a few inroads. That will have gained him a place compared to where he was on the previous lap, so he's now up into 16th. Doc Bush drops down into 17th place, the former motorcycle racer. But for Mark Ellman, he's trying to put all sorts of pressure on Matt Eddles as they fight over what will be 3rd and 4th in Group GTH at the moment. Can he do anything at Graham Hill Bend? He thought about it, but then just backed out of the moves. A long way to go in this 50-minute race. And remember the bit of dust there. That's somebody just run wide coming out of Surtees, or made a mistake going in. Not quite sure. Remember, the cars that we're looking at now will be the first group to pit today. They were the second group to pit in yesterday's race. And has Mark Ellman got a good run this time to see as they head up towards Hawthorne? No, he can't. Still just too far away as they head there, and shadowing them is the leader of Group GTA, which is the BMW in the hands of Ian Astley. The BMW sits in Group GTA because it's an older homologated car in reality, so it's for lower cup spec cars, one make and older GT4 cars. So in other words, it's a BMW, but it's not the current homologated BMW GT4. Here comes Mark Ellman this time. Up the inside is he? No. Again, good defence by Matt Eddles, who just is able to keep the SVG Motorsport Ginetta behind. The SVG BMW sits behind that. And by the look of things, Doc Bush has got himself back ahead of Matt Priestwood's Ginetta. So Priestwood briefly up into 16th. He's going to be back down into 17th again this time through. Now through they'll come, over the start-finish line. 5 cars all fighting over 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th places. The leader in the meantime, Mark Smith, is now the best part of 7 3/4 seconds up the road from Peter Ersig's Audi, who is still under pressure from Darren Kell, actually, for second position. But this is a good quality battle, this. Matt Eddles just had a couple of goes at getting the car turned in towards Graham Hill Bend that time through. You could just see, pitch the car in and then realise it's maybe over-rotating, and for a split second there was a change to the steering angle of the car. But he has not really put a wheel wrong as yet, which means that for Mark Ellman, he is just struggling to try and prise the door open somewhere and sneak his way through. So they're on lap number 6 currently. And again, Mark Ellman tries to see whether there's a possibility of an overlap as they head up towards Westfield, realises it's not going to happen, so tries to take as wide a line into the corner and carry some more momentum out. He had a good run a few laps ago, didn't he, as they went through Dingledale, but again this time he's nowhere near alongside, so tucks himself back behind. So it's Aston Martin from Ginetta, from BMW, and the next of the cars is going to be the Porsche of Doc Bush, followed by another Ginetta, which will be Mac Priestwood's car. Now the difficulty for Ian Astley is that he wants to try and attack and get through and past these cars, but he knows that whilst he is looking to try and do so, he's not going to gain any more championship points because he's in a Group GTA car and he's just overtaken Mark Ellman in the Group GTH Ginetta. So a change for position, but actually ultimately doesn't affect the position in the group for either of those, and it is where you finish in your group that dictates the championship points. 25 points for a win if there's sufficient starters. If there's just a couple of starters in the group, it's 18. If you're the only starter, and I think that will be the case for Group GTB, the Cayley family, father and son, Bill and James, just 15 points if you're the only starter in your group. And there's one car that did qualify that's not out. Unfortunately, there were some engine woes with Paul Bailey and David Brabham's McLaren. So I think there's overheating issues, and I think Paul was very conscious. He's had a lot of engine troubles in GT Cup in the last few years. He did not want to cause himself a problem with them boiling the McLaren dry and blowing another engine. Change of position there. Ian Astley dives up the inside of Matt Eddles, having overtaken Mark Ellman on the previous lap in the Ginetta. He now picks off the Aston Martin of Matt Eddles, and the GT4 older spec BMW started to escape up the road a little bit and leave the squabble behind. And a good squabble it is still. Remember, it is 4 position, the Aston Martin and the Ginetta in the hands of Mark Ellman, the green and the gold car. That will be for 3rd and 4th in Group GTH at this stage. Leading Group GTH should still be the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin. It is in the hands of Archie Clark, who's done some really good things in that car this year. And in fact, Archie Clark and Tom Canning are, I think, across yesterday's races, the only drivers that secured a group win in both races. All the other groups, it was one car won one race, a different car won the second race of the day. Now, good fight going on between James Cayley. He's feeling the pressure of Frank Morris that sits behind. So it's the sole car in Group GTB that's under pressure from the car that's currently 4th in Group GTC. Lamborghini Super Trofeo up against slightly older spec Porsche. And the difference between the Cayley's Porsche and the other cars that we've got out there is that, yes, it's a Cup spec car, but it's older than 5 years. So if it's less than 5 years, then it drops into Group GTC. If it's a slightly older spec car, then it drops into Group GTB, and that's why the Cayleys are in Group GTB in their Porsches, where the other cars we see are all in Group GTC, simply because they're newer. So the first 10 minutes of the race have now elapsed. Mark Smith continuing to build the advantage that he needs to do. It's now up to 8.3 seconds between himself and Peter Ursig. And now he's got the traffic to deal with as well, which is Peter Aronson at the wheel of the second of the 2 Top Cats Lamborghinis. Squabble for second is still very much on, just 0.4 of a second separating Peter Ursig from Darren Kell's McLaren. And then very much on his own now is David Shaw in the all-black G-Cat Racing Porsche that he shares with Greg Caton. For Peter Ursig, he wants to keep pressing on. He really needs to try and keep Darren Kell behind him, because we know come the pit stops, Peter Ursig will be stopping for 90 seconds. Darren Kell will only be stopping for 80. So he really needs to be trying to disappear up the road a little bit in the Audi, knowing full well that he needs a 10-second advantage even to try and overcome what's going to happen in the pit stops to the McLaren that sits directly behind him at this stage. Brake lights flash on. They pitch the car through Paddock Hill Bend, where the circuit really tumbles away, and then climb uphill towards the braking area for Druids. They've got Peter Aronson, the American, just up the road at the wheel of the Lamborghini. Very much on his bucket list it was to race at Brands Hatch. That's why he joins the entry list for this weekend, given the opportunity by Top Cats. And further down through the order, we've still got that battle going on. Matt Eddles doing a grand job, isn't he, of keeping Mark Ellman behind. And they've now got Doc Bush that is looking to try and squeeze through, who is still coming under pressure from Mac Priestwood's Group GTH Ginetta. So they work their way through Dingle Dell and start to climb up towards Sheen Curve, and closing in on them all of the time will be, I think, the race leader now about to place a lap on them. James Cayley very much parks the car on the apex at Druids Corner to try and keep Frank Morris from squeezing his way through. So Group GTB Porsche still under pressure from Group GTC Lamborghini Huracan. Runs a little bit wide though, does Frank, as he heads out of Graham Hill Bend that time through. They're both not that far behind Michael McInerney, who is in 8th position overall in his light blue Porsche. He's partnered up with long-time British GT star Phil Keane for this weekend. Michael McInerney, I think, was originally scheduled to race at Donington Park, but unfortunately didn't make it that weekend. So good to see him out this weekend. And as ever, good to see and catch up with Phil Keane earlier on today. Say a multiple runner-up in the British GT Championship, has won as many races as anybody else in British GT, but has never claimed an overall title. But he is very, very experienced when it comes to driving whether it be Cup spec cars as he's got this weekend, whether it be GT4 spec cars we've seen him out in GT Cup, or of course GT3 cars. Briefly a factory Lamborghini driver was Phil Keane. So 36 minutes to go. Mark Smith now the race leader, very much amongst the traffic, picks his way past Mark Ellman. Flash of the lights as he looks to try and dive up the inside of Matt Eddles, who wasn't quite sure. Further back it looks as though Matt Priestwood has got himself back ahead of Doc Bush. So the white and the Dayglow pink Ginetta now back ahead of the silver liveried Porsche. And this group of cars having been passed by the race leader, if they look in their mirrors, they'll see that closing up ever more is the squabble for second and third place. Peter Ursig still fighting away with Darren Kell. Lead advantage was up to almost 8.5 seconds last time through. And Andre Borodin sweeps his way round the outside of Ian Campbell, who I'm sure will just let Andre go. That's not a fight he needs to worry about. That's a GT3 car passing him. He still hangs on to the lead of Group GTC, which he wants to be doing. And he is 5th, or was 5th overall. That will drop him to 6th. That second in Group GTC will be the yellow and red Lamborghini that sits behind, which will be Graham Tilley, long-time racer in GT Cup in a whole range of things, whether it be Ginettas or Nissans, Mercedes GT3, or this new car for him for this year, which is the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. Matt Eddles still has got Mark Ellman right behind him. Blue flags wave as Matt Priestwood is passed by the squabble for second and third place. And is this the opportunity for Darren Kell? No, Peter Ursig is on the same line as Darren Kell. Can Darren sweep round past all of the traffic at Hawthorne? There's a bit of contact. Matt Eddles goes sideways in the middle of the track. Matt Priestwood has to take to the grass in avoidance, and then Matt Eddles will rejoin, but that was just a very, very small touch between the McLaren and the Aston Martin. Darren Kell was desperate to try and get through and past the traffic, and it was, when you're on the very edge of adhesion, just the lightest of touches was all it took to unsettle the car of Matt Eddles, and round he went. Lost places. That is now going to drop him down through the order. Now the first pit window opens when we've got 26 minutes remaining of the race, because it's between the 24th and the 29th minute since the lights went out. So it's another 8 minutes or so before we can see any cars come in the first batch, which will be any car running in Group GTB, Group GTH and Group GTA can then enter the pits. And then 5 minutes after that, when there's 21 minutes remaining on the timing screen at the top, that's when the cars in Group GTO, Group GT3 and Group GTC can head in. And for Mark Smith, he's got a minimum period pit in to pit out of 90 seconds. Darren Kell has got 10 seconds less than that and is currently 9.5 seconds behind. So that's the task for Mark Smith. He's still got to keep pushing because he knows he is going to stop for longer. He also knows that, of course, in the case of the GCAT Racing Porsche, David Shaw is going to hand over to the very rapid Greg Caton. And equally, Andre Borodin is going to hand over to the pro driver, which is Ollie Webb. So he knows there's going to be some quicker incoming drivers in the cars that are behind him, and they will catch him. But it's the rate of close that we simply don't know. So our race leader is now on lap number 12. Two Porsches together there, which is Doc Bush coming under pressure from David Shaw. So Doc, as ever, always aware as to what's going on around him, moves out of the way, allows the quicker GT3 spec Porsche to go through and ahead of his Cup spec car. And now Doc can ensure he resumes his little squabble and tries to keep that pesky Ginetta, as far as he's concerned, of Matt Priestwood behind him. So they're about to come through and over the start-finish line. Doc Bush running in 15th place overall, 5th in Group GTC. Matt Priestwood running 16th overall and 2nd in Group GTA. The fastest lap of the race has gone the way of Mark Smith, 1 minute 25.034. That could be important because it's the fastest lap in the first half of this race that will give us the grid for part 2. Fraser Fennick looking on from the Top Cats Racing Garage. He's looking on at this car here, the number 23 car that he'll be jumping into come the pit stops, in the hands of the hugely experienced Ian Campbell, who's done a chunk of racing in McLaren GT3 cars over the year, also did a little bit of McLaren Artura Trophy. Good to see him back out racing in the UK, having seen less of him last year. and as quick as ever, but you can see the pressure he's under from Graham Tilley, who is never slow. Graham Tilley, you know, he's the oldest driver in the field, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, but he is still as quick as ever. He is as fit, if not fitter, than most drivers that are probably a quarter of his age. And he is putting Ian Campbell under pressure for the lead of Group GTC. The car that's third in Group GTC is going to be Michael McKinney, and the number 63 Lamborghini is fourth in Group GTC at the moment, which is in the hands of Frank Morris. Frank Morris just cannot find a way through and past James Cayley. Despite his very best efforts, he has just come up short on every occasion. That's largely because the Cayley family Porsche is just making sure that it locks the door and keeps it fairly bolted. Frank Morris can't find the key at the moment to get it unlocked. And despite the fact they're squabbling, they're not still that far behind the light blue Porsche of Michael McInerney, who completes the Group GTC podium at the moment. There is the light blue Porsche just up the road from the Porsche and the Lamborghini squabble. So towards the conclusion of another lap they will come. James Cayley working hard at the wheel of the family Porsche. His son Bill scheduled to take over for part two of the race. Frank Morris brakes as late as he can at the wheel of the Lamborghini, tries to take us later line in towards Paddock Hill Bend to see whether he can prise open a little bit of an undercut. But again, James Cayley just making sure he gets the car across the nose of the Lamborghini, and Frank Thomas has pretty much tried everything so far and nothing has quite come off, but he is looking very racy indeed. Briefly the car unsettled as he was on the curbs there turning in towards Graham Hill Bend, but didn't really lose a chunk of time as a result of that. But he will be, I'm sure, getting slightly frustrated, but there's nothing he can do. You just got to be patient. You know, the race will come to you, and if it doesn't come to him, then it might come to James Pickford, who's going to take over that car for part two of the race. Now we are getting close towards the pit window. Still another 5 minutes to go yet before we can see any cars in the pit lane. The lead advantage is exactly 8 seconds now, so it has come down very slightly. Peter Ursig still in second place. Darren Kell still in third, and remember, Darren Kell in third place will stop for 10 seconds longer than the two cars ahead of him in the race, because for Mark Smith and Peter Ursig, they will both stop for 90 seconds. Now, James Cayley for the first time has got at least a little bit of breathing space between himself and number 63 Lamborghini. They're fighting over the final two places inside the top 10 overall. James Cayley in the Porsche leading Group GTB. They are the sole entrant this weekend in Group GTB. We did have Tom Walpole racing yesterday, but a bit like Donington Park, he raced on the Saturday, but can't make it for the Sunday. And again, James Cayley just doing a grand job, just making sure he gets the car where he wants it to be. They had Peter Aronson's Lamborghini to deal with as well. Peter making sure he's staying well and truly out of harm's way. And we'll be hoping for a better fortunes today than he had yesterday, as he still gets to learn Brands Hatch. You know, it was on his bucket list to race here. He's doing it, which is, you know, something fantastic. What a great circuit to have on your bucket list. But so just a small misjudgment from him yesterday caused retirement for him and for the sister car as well from Top Cats Racing. So they were up until 3:30 in the morning repairing the pair of cars, but well done to them for sticking with it. And both cars have performed absolutely perfectly through free practice this morning, through qualifying, and so far in the race. And for Peter Aronson, he's about to be lapped for the second time by Mark Smith before too much longer. The Paddock Motorsport McLaren 720S GT3 going beautifully well in the hands of the American. Now Michael McInerney is slowly getting caught. There's Bill Cayley, so it's definitely James. There was a slight question mark whether it's James, but absolutely that's Bill Cayley with the crash helmet just going on now. So he'll be taking over from his father before too much longer. A pair of them with plenty of experience racing Porsches, but not necessarily Cup spec cars. Certainly 996s, 997s and Caymans. And Frank Morris has finally done it. Just so late, so confident on the brakes going into Paddock Hill Bend. Finally, the Group GTC Lamborghinis goes through and ahead of the Group GTB Porsche. And now what Frank Morris will want to do is catch the light blue Porsche of Michael McInerney that lies ahead, because if he can catch it and get past, then that would then mean that himself and James Pickford potentially could be on for a podium in Group GTC. They're fourth in the group at the moment. But the only thing that's preventing them from grabbing a podium in the group is that light blue Porsche that lies ahead. For second and third, still the same order. Peter Ursig can't really shake away James Kell. Peter Ursig will also be conscious that the car behind is going to stop for an extra 10 seconds, so anything he can do to prevent the McLaren going through is a good thing, knowing full well that when it comes to the pit stops, the McLaren's likely to come out of the pits ahead. As long as everything goes to plan, there's no changes of tyres in the pit stops. It's simply a driver change where you've got one. If you haven't got a driver change, then the driver just sits behind the wheel. There'll be adjustments to tyre pressures, grab a quick drink. But as you say, you cannot go any shorter than the minimum time allocation from pit in to pit out. If you do, the time that you are short by is what you'll get a stop-go penalty for. So if you're short by a second, you have to come back into the pits, go all the way down the pit lane at 50 kilometres per hour, which we know takes 20 seconds, stop for a second, and then go back out. And with the pit window now open by the look of things, we're starting to see the first cars come into the pit lane. So into the pits has come Matt Eddles to hand over to the Irishman Sam Mayer-Lockenham. Into the pit lane comes James Cayley to hand over to his son Bill Cayley. But for the cars running at the sharp end, those in GT3 and GTC, their pit window isn't open as yet, so they cannot as yet dive their way into the pit lane. So pit window opens with 26 minutes remaining. So that's why everybody's starting to dive for the pit lane now. So that's a 5-minute pit window for the first group of cars. Anything in Group GTB, Group GTH, Group GTA can head into the pits now. Into the pits has also come Archie Clark at the wheel of the Feathers Motorsport number 82 Aston Martin. That's the car that has claimed Group GTH honours in both of the races that we had yesterday. It's the pro driver Tom Canning who's taking over now. Tom's been around a while and is very much part of the Aston Martin family. And that's a spin, and that is a spin for the number 24 car, which I don't think has pitted as yet, so that should be Ian Astley that's behind the wheel of that one. Is it showing him as coming into the pit lane? Don't believe it is. Having to do a 3-point turn, so that's going to slow down the car. It was leading Group GTA, and I suspect they have lost the lead of Group GTA. Don't know what caused it, but it's taking him a while just to recover from that, and I'm afraid that will be the lead of the group that has gone. There's no obvious signs of any damage on that side of the car, so maybe it was just a slight missed braking point or lack of concentration, or maybe there was a little touch. We've also got into the pit lane car number 30, which is Simon Griffiths. I think he's doing the whole race on his own. Hadley Simpson did the whole race yesterday. So I think Simon Griffiths at the wheel of the Innovation Racing number 30 Ginetta will do his own. The sister car from Brent Millage comes in. We know Brent's doing it on his own. Good to see Brent back racing. And it's a broken toe link by the look of things for the BMW. So that was what pitched it off. Now, did it break of its own accord, or was there a little bit of contact that broke it? But that is going to be it, I'm afraid, for Ian Astley. And Neil Wallace will not get the opportunity to race. So Peter Ursig still in second place in the Audi. The McLaren still there in the hands of Darren Kell in third position. Now Darren Kell is now 11.3 seconds adrift of the car that leads the race. He ideally needs to stay within 10 seconds of Mark Smith, because we know that the car of Darren Kell is going to stop for 10 seconds shorter than the race leader, and he's just ebbed away slightly, too far from that at this stage. There's traffic as well to deal with for both himself and Peter Ursig, but they're not going to be able to deal with Michael McInerney's car until they get to the exit of Clearways Corner. So squeezing their way through now. That's Mac Priestwood, who has dived for the pit lane, so Lewis Tyndall is about to jump on board. Those that have pitted are now slowly working their way back out onto outlaps. As for the cars we're looking at the moment, the pit window isn't still quite open. When there's 21 minutes to go, that's when we can potentially see the Audi or the McLaren come in. Or, of course, the race-leading McLaren in the hands of Mark Smith, who now leads by 12.4 seconds and has 12.6 seconds advantage over the car that's in third place, knowing full well now that hopefully for Mark Smith, when he dives for the pit lane, he should still be able to hang on to the lead of the race. So he's stopping for 10 seconds longer than the third placed Audi. He's stopping for the third placed McLaren. He's stopping for exactly the same amount of time as the second place Audi. So the race is going to plan for Paddock Motorsport currently. I've got to say, you know, the pace Mark Smith has had this year, he wasn't slow last year, not at all, but more knowledge of the car and the circuit and the team, confidence building, not having to commute from America all of the time, all of those things just ticking boxes, and his driving has been superb so far this year. So Matt Priestwood out of the car, Lewis Tyndall jumps on board, and the number 73 Ginetta trundles its way back down the pit lane. 100 seconds as a bare minimum from pit in to pit out for that car. And as long as they're the right side of that 100 seconds, they'll be good to go for the rest of the race. And now the pit window should now be open for the second batch of cars. So you might see the Group GT3 and Group GTC cars head for the pit lane at the end of this one. Race leader has not come in. I don't think it was quite open when Mark Smith came over the start-finish line. He picks his way through and past Graham Tilley's Lamborghini that lies 6th overall. Now, it wasn't open for him to come into the pit lane, but it was open for the 4th place Porsche of David Shaw to come in. So he is the first of the cars in the second batch to come in. And Mark Smith, has he got a problem? He has. Mark Smith has slowed all of a sudden out on circuit, and Graham Tilley has gone back through. Now, if you're going to have a problem, it's occurring just as the pit window opens. Might not be a bad thing if it's just an alt control and delete. They can get that McLaren back out, but Mark Smith is slowing out on circuit. Andre Borodin unlaps himself. We've already seen Graham Tilley unlap himself. Is it a puncture? Possibly. Difficult to tell from there, but whatever it is, Mark Smith is well aware of it and is trying to stay out of harm's way as he dives in towards the pit lane area. Is it left rear? I think it's left rear possibly that's gone down on the car. So has he hit a stone? Has he hit a bit of debris? Has he bumped the curb too hard? And the rest of the cars all fell their way in, and you can see that right behind him now is the red McLaren, which is in the hands of Darren Kell, who was 12 seconds adrift and is going to come into the pit lane right on the coattails of the race leader. So Paddock Motorsport, I suspect, will be ready. I think there's going to be a new left rear tyre going on it. Yes, it was indeed a left rear puncture for Mark Smith, and how unfortunate is that? He hasn't done anything wrong all season really, and then just an unfortunate tyre blowout from him. They'll check all the others. I think they're going to change the left-hand side ones. Brands Hatch is quite hard on left-hand tyres because of there being so many right-hand corners that you need to turn. They've got plenty of time to deal with that because it's 90 seconds that the car needs to be in the pit lane. It's still on the air jacks. Take it off the air jacks, fire it up, push it backwards because they park at 45 degrees, and then ensure that he gets out onto the track as soon as possible. But they are losing time through this, and so Darren Kell is being pushed back. Fraser Fenwick jumps on board the number 23 Lamborghini as it goes its way down the pit lane. The yellow and red Lamborghini is in, which is Graham Tilley giving way to Senan Fielding. Michael McInerney's Porsche is in to be taken over by Phil Keane. Andre Borodin is in. He's going to have former European Le Mans Series champion Ollie Webb behind the wheel of it. So out of the pit lane comes Darren Kell. And there goes now Mark Smith. Now that the time has elapsed, they've changed the tyres on the car. They lost time with that puncture out on track, but he's still got 18 minutes to try and charge his way onto the coattails of what I think will be the leader once we've cycled through all of this, which will be either Darren Kell or possibly Peter Ursig, but on the basis of Darren Kell was always going to stop for 10 seconds longer, I think once we've cycled through all the pit stops, it will be the number 88 that will pick up the lead. There's Senan Fielding just waiting for the final bit of clock to tick away. 125 seconds from pit in to pit out for that car. Largely because, of course, Senan Fielding is classified as a pro. So 85 seconds in the pit lane, plus the extra 20 to pass through it, plus some success seconds as well, 20 success seconds because they won their group yesterday in the pit stop race here at Brands Hatch. Lewis Tyndall fighting away with Bill Cayley. That I don't think is going to be for position. Peter Ursig still stationary in the pits. He was, I think, the last of those to stop, so he stayed out a lap longer than Mark Smith and Darren Kell. The Audi R8. Audi having stopped their Audi Sport programme now and having delivered the last Audi R8 to customers at the back end of the 2024 championship season, so it's, you know, an obsolete car now in terms of you can't go and buy a new one, but it's still as competitive as ever, and case in point of that is what Peter Ursig has done with it in the GT Cup Championship in 2025 and the amount of winning he's done in other championships in 2024. So he trundles his way down the pit lane But you can see Mark Smith has already gone through, Darren Kell has already gone through. So it is, as expected, the number 88 car that picks up the lead by 4.4 seconds from the American Mark Smith. Now, what can Darren Kell do? The track-focused prepared car will be watching his mirrors. He'll be hearing over the radio that Mark Smith in the Paddock Motorsport McLaren is in second position, 4.4 seconds behind, and the task will be just keep that gap where you need it. Keep it around about 4.5, 5 seconds if you can. Keep pushing hard. We've seen Darren Kell out in GT Cup in previous seasons, racing in a Mercedes AMG GT4. Less experience in the GT3 spec 720S McLaren. But he's going well, and he's going to have a little bit more traffic as well to deal with, probably at the start of the next lap. I think it's Doc Bush's Team Parker Racing prepared Porsche that will be gobbled up by our race leader. For Mark Smith, his task will be to try and eat into what is that 4.4 second gap. So 4.4 seconds is the relative gap first to second place. Peter Ursig is a further 6 seconds back in third place. Greg Caton is in fourth place, 18 seconds further back. But of those top 4 drivers, no disrespect to any of them, Greg Caton ought to be the quickest. He's not classified as a pro. He used to be classified as a pro sporting, but he is very, very quick and knows the GCAT Racing Porsche inside and out. Fastest lap of the race has just gone to one of the pro drivers that's just jumped on board, Ollie Webb, at the wheel of the number 240 McLaren that was taken over by Andre Borodin. Has just popped in a 1 minute 24.722. I mentioned earlier on that the fastest lap of the race gives us the grid for the sprint race, but it's only the fastest lap that's set in the first half of the race. So in other words, the pro drivers that are coming now, the likes of Ollie Webb, cannot influence that grid. His fastest lap time happens in part 2 of the race, so it will not count towards the way the grid is going to be formed. So Doc Bush dealt with by the lead 2 cars. The lead advantage that was 4.4 seconds has now come down to 3.6. Being pushed down the pit lane, you can see it's still crabbing slightly, can't you, because of that broken right rear toe link. Here's the SVG Motorsport BMW, and there you can see the angle that rear wheel is at. That's why the car was crabbing down the circuit. So there is a sign of a little touch on that side. There is also a sign of damage. Yes, there's damage and there's paintwork on that rear wheel, so there must have been some contact that caused the spin free in Astley in the first place and the subsequent retirement with the damage. Peter Ursig in third place is hanging on to third place. He's got Ollie Webb behind him. There is a lap difference between these 2 cars. Ollie Webb is simply trying to unlap himself from Peter Ursig. And if you were Peter Ursig, you probably would be well versed to, when the time is right, just let Ollie Webb go and sit on the coattails of the McLaren and see if you can learn something more about the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. But Peter Ursig will want to make sure he keeps that McLaren behind. Peter is on lap number 25. Ollie Webb is only on lap number 24 at the moment. There's a full lap difference between the pair of them. And into the pits, I'm afraid to say. The pit stop must have been too short. Stop-go penalty for Greg Caton. So that is going to undo the hard work that he was looking to do. As he rejoins the circuit, he has got the car of Phil Keane just ahead of him. And that will be a car that is also not on the same lap. So again, Greg Caton will look to try and unlap himself from the light blue Porsche in the hands of pro driver Phil Keane. The squabble for the lead of the race was down to 1.75 seconds at the beginning of this lap, but that is not that anymore, because Mark Smith has absolutely charged onto the coattails of the Darren Kell track-focused racing prepared McLaren. So the 2 720Ss, identical spec cars. The setup might be subtly different, but they are now absolutely together for the lead of the race as they head over the start-finish line for the 25th time onto lap number 26 with 12 minutes remaining. And it's not taken long for Mark Smith to close up a 4.4 second deficit. It's only taken, what, 3, maybe 4 laps at the very most. So his average pace is about a second a lap quicker than Darren Kell since the pit stops. He's caught. Now the difficult thing will be getting by, because of course Brands Hatch, it's narrow, it's not one of the widest circuits, it's very unforgiving, and it can bite you back if you're not careful. Oh no, problems, I'm afraid, for the McLaren. We saw Ollie Webb retire the car yesterday, not long after he'd taken over the car, and it looks as though fate has befallen them again, and that's McLaren. I'm afraid he's going to be out of the race. I'm sure we saw Ollie come into the pit lane yesterday and retire the car. But there you go, frustration for Ollie Webb, looking around the rear end of the car as though something isn't quite right, but that is going to be enormously frustrating for the Greystone team. I think yesterday called into the pits but subsequently went back out because the car was classified 4th overall. But either way, it being pushed into the garage now, that looks as though they are done for the day. The only consolation is that Ollie Webb set the fastest lap of the race, but as I say, because he's the pro driver and it's part 2 of the race, won't count for the way that the grid's formed anyway for the sprint race later on. So for the lead of the race, Mark Smith has gone through. Didn't take him long to catch. He caught, prized the door open, and is now into the lead of the race. Now he will look to try and eke away the advantage if he can. He won the sprint race yesterday. He will look to try and see if he can grab another victory here, if at all possible. And it was the exit of Stirling's where he managed to sneak his way through, and then it would be the run down towards Hawthorne where he was just able to hang on to it, so he could be on course for win number 3, it would be, I think, of the championship season. He won the long race that we had at Donington Park by 34 thousandths of a second after nearly 2 hours of racing. He won the sprint race yesterday and is now leading the pit stop race here, but he's going to have a busy lap ahead of him because he's now trying to dive his way through and up the inside of Lewis Tyndall. He does that. The next of the cars he's going to want to get through and pass is going to be the pro-driven Tom Canning Aston Martin from Feathers Motorsport, and Tom's not going to make it easy. He's going to want to keep pushing as hard as he possibly can because that car is looking to try and close in on the Ginetta that lies just ahead, which is Simon Griffiths, who leads Group GTH at the moment. Tom Canning, I think, just moves out of harm's way, lets the McLaren come through in a straight line so that it doesn't affect his pace on the lap, because, say, that Aston Martin is going to be fully focused on keeping in contact with the number 30 Ginetta that leads Group GTH at the moment. Now Darren Kell is faced with the same task of trying to thread his way past the GTH cars. Up towards 30s they'll go. Mark Smith starting to scamper away ever more. 1.1 seconds to the good now over Darren Kell, who is now able to pick off the Tom Canning Aston Martin. In a straight line, he should be able to catch Simon Griffiths at the wheel of the Ginetta. Lots of flashing of the lights, but he's not going to get there in time for Hawthorne, so he's going to have to wait until the Derek Minter straight to squeeze his way through. Derek Minter, a very successful TT motorcycle racer many, many years ago, hence the straight there is named after him. And finally, on the run in towards Dingle Dell is where he can get past the Ginetta. So now Simon Griffiths looks in his mirrors, and what can he see? The car is trying to take the group lead off him. So number 30 leads Group GTH. The 82 Aston Martin behind, second in the group. And we've seen some great battles in Group GTH over the last few years, not least of which was yesterday's squabble for the winning Group GTH, which was settled the way of the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin by just 42 thousandths of a second on the run to the line. Well, looks as though we're in for another grandstand battle here for Group GTH. Simon Griffiths, Jeff Sprutt to try and hang on to the lead of it in the Innovation Racing Ginetta. Tom Canning weaving one way, weaving the other. You can see the nose dip on the Aston Martin. Normally aspirated Ginetta, turbocharged Aston Martin. And as they head down in towards Graham Hill Bend, Tom Canning thinking there might be another opportunity there, but it wasn't forthcoming. Just has to sit behind again and see if he can get a good exit coming off Surtees. That could be the opportunity. So try and take as wide a swipe in, get on the throttle as soon as you possibly can, and then see if you can get a slipstream. But we know what Simon Griffiths is going to do. He's going to hook that right-hand side of the circuit and protect the inside line on the up towards Hawthorne. Then he moves over to the left-hand side. As he gets on the brake, there's just a tiny bit of a wiggle from the tail end of the Ginetta, but he's confident enough that he's got sufficient speed heading down the Derek Minter straight and through Westfield to hang on to it. So the two of them still together for the lead of the group. And at the moment, looks as though the Ginetta just has the upper hand over the Aston Martin, but any slight mistake at all, Tom Canning is going to pounce on that. You can rest assured. So he's very experienced driving the Aston Martin GT4. He's still only in his early 20s, but he seems to have been around forever. I think he was 16, probably 17 years of age at the most when he first started racing GT4 Astons. And it looks as though toe link, well done to SVG Motorsport, Andy and the team, has been fixed, and I think we're going to see Neil Wallace head out into the race. So it didn't take them long to sort that. Peter Ursig now in third place, trying to thread his way past the lead battling Group GTH. James Pickford also looking to see if he can wiggle his way through. James Pickford is driving the number 63 Lamborghini. That's another Super Trofeo spec car. He is currently second in Group GTC and will be running in 6th place overall. Group GTC still being led by the Top Cats Racing number 23 car, which is Fraser Fenwick behind the wheel now. So Group GT3 being led by the overall race leader Mark Smith. Group GTC being led by Fraser Fenwick, number 23. Group GTB being led by Bill Cayley. It's the only car in Group GTB this weekend. Group GTH being led by the squabble that we're looking at, the Ginetta and the Aston Martin. And Group GTA now being led by Lewis Tyndall, the number 73 Ginetta, having taken over the lead because of the problems that befell this car that is just heading down pit lane and about to re-enter the race by the look of things, which is now in the hands of Neil Wallace. And the one good thing is that, yes, OK, any result for this race is gone, but at least it gives the driver and the team the opportunity to check that repairs have been effected appropriately. And you can use this next 5 minutes almost as a bit of testing, just to make sure, give you the confidence that come the second sprint race later on of the weekend, that the car is going to be performing as expected. So less than 5 minutes to go. The third place car of Peter Ursig has got the 6th place car of James Pickford behind him. There's a full lap between that pair. Mark Smith, our overall race leader, has just threaded his way through and past Fraser Fenwick, who still continues to lead Group GTC at this stage. And this will be repaying the team for the 3 AM finish whilst they were repairing the rear end of the Lamborghini that suffered that impact into the barriers yesterday along the Cooper Straight and the running towards Surtees, where the two teammates made contact. What a way to repay the team with what has been a sterling performance in the first part of it from Ian Campbell, in the second part of it from Fraser Fenwick, who heads on to the brakes and turns his way now through the left-hander at Stirling's. And with 4 minutes to go, there'll be the lap they're about to start and 2 more thereafter, I would have thought, between Mark Smith and yet another victory. For Group GTH, they are just coming up against the car that's just come out of the pit lane, which is Neil Wallace. Where do they meet Neil Wallace? Slap bang in the middle of Sheen Curve. And for Simon Griffiths, he couldn't really afford to be compromised there. Thankfully, if there was any compromise, Tom Canning was compromised by the same degree. But now Simon Griffiths is very much on the defensive as they head up towards Clearways and Clark Curve. Is this the undercut for Tom Canning here? I think it is. Yeah, he gets the undercut. He's going to draw himself alongside. He's got the inside line as they head up towards Paddock Hill Bend. They're side by side for the leader Group GTH over the start-finish line in a straight line. The Ginetta has slightly more top end, but later on the brakes goes Tom Canning. He had the inside line and he is through to pick up the lead of Group GTH. And now what Tom Canning is trying to do is trying to get another car between himself and Simon Griffiths, who was having none of that. Chopped across the nose of Senan Fielding there. I think Senan thought he'd probably got the job done to sneak through and head and place a lap on that car. But Simon Griffiths thinking, no, not yet. I want to stay in contact with the Aston Martin I've just lost the lead to. So Senan Fielding now able to go past Simon Griffiths and should be able to catch the next of the cars, probably on the run down towards Hawthorne. And McLaren in the meantime of Greystone GT, that was started by Andre Borodin and was driven very briefly in that race by Ollie Webb, looking rather forlorn in its garage. Work will continue. We'll see that car back out later on. I think Greystone GT do have a spare car available to them, so subject to what the issue is, they might want to talk to the organisers and see whether they could utilise a spare car, but there would be a penalty for doing that, I'm sure. So first place over the start-finish line, nearly 10 seconds adrift now is James Kell in second position. Here comes the Audi of Peter Ursig over the start-finish line. He's a further 6 seconds back in third place. Greg Caton in the GCAT Racing Porsche will be fourth, but that car, remember, had to come into the pit lane to serve what was a stop-go penalty for being too efficient with their pit stop. Say they were supposed to stop for 100 seconds from pit in to pit out as a minimum. So that clearly was slightly shorter for some reason. Miscalculation by the team, speeding by the driver, don't simply know, but cost them dear. And otherwise they probably could have mounted a slightly greater challenge for third place overall, but not to be on this occasion. Brent Millage diving up the inside there of Lewis Tyndall, and I think that was for position. Yes, it was. That was for the lead of Group GTA. So Brent Millage now, with that good move up the inside of the number 73 car there, picks up, I think that's the lead of Group GTA for him. And for Brent, he'll be really, really pleased with that. I had a quick chat to him earlier on today, just to ask how things were going, and he said, well, I'm still not as quick as I ought to be, but he's been out of a race car for 4 years, and he said, no, I found 4 seconds in one of the sessions, I found another 2 seconds in the next session. It's going in the right direction. So he was confident that he's making strides in the right direction, and a big stride in the right direction would be grabbing a group win here. He did say he's less interested in the trophies, he's more interested in just making progress. And having made really good progress so far this year is our race leader, Mark Smith, who is about to come up and place a lap on the Owen Hizzy-driven SVG Motorsport Ginetta. Through and over the start-finish line goes Simon Griffiths. You can see that Tom Canning has just edged away since taking up the lead of Group GTH. The clock is at 0 pretty much. The race leader is on his last lap. And for Tom Canning, he is more than capable, I'm sure, of just making sure he keeps that Innovation Racing Ginetta behind him on this final tour of the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. 2.4332 miles of it. But for Mark Smith, he's only got a couple of corners to go. He comes up towards the left-hander at Stirling's, turns his way in towards the left-hander, accelerates his way up towards Clearway's corner, and it's going to be another win for Mark Smith. That will please him and the Paddock Motorsport team. He won the sprint race yesterday. He wins the pit stop race today, which is his second pit stop race win of the season, making it 3 for all. He's the winner of round 6 of the 2025 GT Cup Championship. We'll wait the arrival of James Kell over the start-finish line. Here comes his McLaren now to finish in second place overall as he comes through. And then third place overall will be the Audi of Peter Ursig, who comes through to finish in third position. Another solid race from Peter as well. But for Mark Smith, that now means that so far this season he has failed to finish off the overall podium. He had a third and a second and a first in that order at Donington Park, and so far this weekend he has had a first and a third and a first, so he has had plenty of wins. Group GTH is going to go the way of Tom Canning and Archie Clark, so they've won the race in Group GTH exclusively this weekend. They claimed both race wins yesterday in Group GTH. They claim another group win today in Group GTH. And then there's just another few cars to take the checkered flag, which will include the Group GTB winning car, which will be Bill Cayley to bring the Uber GT Performance Porsche to the checkered flag, started by his father James Cayley. And then we've also got the arrival of the winner of Group GTA over the start-finish line, which will be the next car, I think, to take the checkered flag, which will be Brent Millage coming through. Brent Millage confirmed, yes, as the winner in Group GTA. That will please him enormously. And here comes, over the start-finish line, the Group GTB winning Porsche in the hands of Bill Cayley. So I think that is every car home now for round 6 of the 2025 GT Cup Championship. Remember, they'll be back out later on for a sprint race as well. Looking forward to that one. It's going to be around about 5 to 5, 10 to 5, something like that this afternoon. We'll see them back out there. But let's just confirm some results for you then for round 6 of the 2025 Championship. It's a win for Mark Smith, his third of the season. And in second place was Darren Kell, with Peter Ursig finishing in third. David Shaw and Greg Caton were fourth, ahead of the Group GTC winning car of Fraser Fenwick and Ian Campbell, who were fifth. Frank Morris and James Pickwood were sixth, ahead of Graham Tilley and Senan Fielding. Michael McInerney and Phil Keane were in 8th place, and 9th place was our Group GTB winners, James and Bill Cayley. Completing the top 10, the winners of Group GTH, which was the car of Archie Clark and Tom Canning. Then, as we head outside of the top 10, in 11th place it was Simon Griffiths, who drove solo in that one. Doc Bush was 12th, ahead of Matt Eddles and Sam Mayer Locknam. And then it was Peter Aronson that was next up in 14th. And in 15th place, that's the Group GTA winner, Brent Millage. Only just, though, did he sneak that with a couple of laps to go ahead of Lewis Tyndall and Matt Priestwood, who was 16th. Mark Elman and Owen Hizzy were there in 17th. And I'm afraid it was retirement for Andre Borodin and Ollie Webb. And for poor old Neil Wallace and Ian Astley, they lost many, many laps with that broken toe link. But they did see the checkered flag in the end. Great work by the team to get them out. So that's it for round 6 of the 2025 GT Cup Championship. All of the cars being pushed back into their garages in advance of the preparation that will be required for our final race coming up, and that will take place at around about 10 to 5 this afternoon. So why not join us for our final race of the weekend, the sprint race, later on today here from Brands Hatch. Until then, we'll say goodbye.